Welcome back. In today's lesson, I'd like to talk about the idea of implied line. Implied line is a line in an artwork that is not physically there, but is suggested by different points in the artwork. So here I have two examples. One, just a simple example of making implied line in drawing, which we're going to focus mainly on for our artwork today. But I also wanted to talk about implied line using other means or other purposes in a drawing or a painting. Okay, so here if we look at our first example, the artist has left out some lines. For example, this line right here. They have also left out this line right here and various other lines throughout this artwork. Okay, the reason why is that the artist has picked out important lines that tell the true story of this picture. All right, this little tip here, the way the handle curves up here, the curve of the belly, all those pieces are the most important information that you need as the viewer to understand this object. Whereas if then the artist leaves out a little bit right there, your mind's eye can fill it in and it becomes more engaging for you as the viewer. Likewise, once you've seen the bulge of the belly here, you can see this piece in your mind's eye. You don't need that information to be filled in for you. Okay? Now, talking about other uses or other means of implied lines, as an artist you could use implied lines in a compositional aspect. In this Baroque composition, the artist truly wants us to be looking along this diagonal of the picture plane, right? And in order to do that, they don't draw a line, but they make arrows or lines in a sense by this sword pointing down towards the victim's head, the gaze of the angel pointing down towards the victim's head, and the foot here actually pointing and standing on the victim's head. So all of those compositional aspects really draw the eye this way, and it's a line that is implied. It's not truly there, but you see it as the viewer, and the artist is exploiting that compositional use of an implied line to direct you, the viewer, around the picture. Okay? Now, in our next example, we can talk about hard edges or defined lines, whereas with implied lines, sometimes you don't necessarily make a dotted line, but you use shading or color to show the difference between various lines or areas. So like these two pictures here, this apple has been outlined very meticulously, and you can see the outline. It's describing the apple, and we see it, we understand it. It's very easy to understand. However, the other picture here with an implied line based on the different colors or values of areas, you can see that right here there is no defined line, there's no hard outline of the edge, but between these two our mind tells us there's an edge, right? Because the apple is darker and the background is white. Likewise, right here where the apple comes up and we've lost this edge here because of the highlight, our mind fills that gap in up to the top of this apple. So sometimes you can have implied lines based on the way that shading or color or value show the difference between two areas in a painting. This is a way of making implied lines by another means. Okay? Now this final example I'd like to show you just because they're really elegant drawings of how I would like you to use implied line. Okay, for example, these two Picasso pictures here, Picasso has done a great job in drawing one line. I mean, if you look at this one line here for our owl, he has done complete justice to the form of an owl with one line, and he's left out a ton of information, but yet it's still really interesting to look at, and it's captivating because of the way that he has drawn those lines and because of the what he has left out. Likewise, in this picture here with the dove in the face, he hasn't even drawn the under part of the eyes. Alright, he's completely left those out, but our mind fills them in. Likewise, right here on the lips, he's left that little gap right at the corner of her lip, and our mind fills it in. It's more interesting than if he had drawn all that information in. And the final example here, the way that the artist has drawn this horse beautifully, catching every line and then leaving out the belly here. We don't need that information. We can tell by the curve here on the belly what that horse's belly is going to look like. We can tell because of the way that this hoof and leg is drawn here. We can tell what this side looks like. It's more engaging that it's not there, in fact. Same on this leg and on this leg here. Our mind doesn't need that information. We fill it in our mind's eye, and it's more interesting because of that. Okay, so in our example here, where I'm drawing, you'll see I leave a dotted line. We don't want a dotted line in our picture that looks like a pattern or looks very like repetition-y. We want the lines to leave out the information that is unimportant and put in the information that is important. Okay, and that's a hard choice to make sometimes. Here I have a defined line drawing, and here I have a drawing with implied line. Now, I put in various lines to pick out kind of the main ideas of that shape, yet I leave some out so that the viewer can fill some of those in. Likewise here, it's not a perfect circle, sorry about that, but I leave out some information here and here, but your mind can still tell that it's a circle sitting on some kind of a surface with the shadow there. Same thing here. I leave this information out, but you can fill it in. All right? Pick out the most important lines, whether you're drawing a landscape or a portrait or whatever other kind of project we are using or working on. Pick out the most important information. Perhaps you're going to make it look like it's overlapping with your implied line. And whether you're using an ink pen or a Sharpie, be delicate. Make your lines thick where they need to be thick and make them thin where they need to be thin. Okay? So in that sense, when we use our implied line, we are picking out the most important information. We are putting it in the right place, and you're using those empty spaces to engage your viewer's mind into the picture or painting rather than give them all the information. Okay? And that's what I would like to see you do for your implied line on whatever project it is we are working on.